Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. Today we're talking about everything from Hydro Flask bottles to flying planes through the Bermuda Triangle. This is a wild story of entrepreneurship. Episode 230 features Captain Travis Rosbach, explorer, entrepreneur, and Hydro Flask founder.
Watching the factories grow with us was really cool too. Like watching the quality of life of the people who were helping support the project. That was a lot of fun because it takes thousands of people to create these products. I mean, it's not just, one guy knocks out a bottle every 15 minutes and, there's 5 of those guys. There's lots and lots of people that are required to produce the packaging and all of the machines and keep the machines running and packaging the material on the pallets and getting them out to the docks, the dock workers getting them onto the ships. And so it was fun to watch how many people actually touched the bottle prior to the actual customer touching the bottle for the first time.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Our guest is Captain Travis Rosbach. He cares about the environment, loves to travel, and wants to lift others up. In 2009, he and Cindy Morse founded Hydro Flask, a maker of insulated steel bottles that keep cold drinks cold and hot drinks hot. My apologies in advance for technical difficulties that required changing recording platforms mid-interview in a brief time when Travis's microphone had an issue. I hope that you'll look past all of that because we cover a lot of interesting stories, from travel adventures to searching for a manufacturing partner in China to Kundalini yoga. In this episode, you'll learn, can we bring manufacturing back to the United States? What Travis is most proud of looking back at Hydro Flask. And make sure you tune in to the end to hear about challenges that Travis faced when selling his company. Spoiler alert, it pays to have a great attorney on your side. Now let's get inspired with Captain Travis Rosbach. Travis, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I would say that probably my earliest memory of money would be right after my mom divorced my stepdad. I was about 12 years old, and we were broke. We were poor. We were living on welfare and government cheese. And we didn't really know our next door neighbor very well. He died, and we got his sister came in and said, "Hey, would you mind doing the estate sale?" So we went over there to do the estate sale. And it was like I walked into a whole nother world. I just stepped through this door and stepped into this world of wealth and money and fine art and just all of the fancy. I mean, it just smelled better than our house even. The energy was so awesome. It was so powerful. And I realized this is a very prominent attorney here in Salem. And he was living a radically different life than we were. And yet we were only, 40 feet separated. And I realized there's a big difference between the haves and the have-nots. And I want to live in a house like this. I want to do this. This is where I belong here. So I think that would probably be my first money, thought and belief, and all of that kind of started right there.
So that was an instant mindset shift of you kind of visualizing a different direction that you wanted to head into.
I had no idea that even existed. I thought that everybody lived like us. I know that, my buddies and their houses were very similar to ours. And I hadn't really ever seen opulence before. And I'd seen the outside of the big houses up a little bit further up the hill, but to have one literally right next to us, it really was a very transformational experience. I really walked through a portal that there was no going back.
That's pretty cool. I understand that as part of that helping with the estate sale, you were given a choice of, is there something here that you'd like to take?
Yeah. His sister said, she looked at me and she said, you can have, one thing in the house, like whatever you want, you can have it. There was beautiful artwork and there were Rolexes and suits and ties and fancy shoes and just amazing things that probably just weren't real practical for a 12-year-old. But my mind was just racing. I was just thinking, wow, this is so cool. I get, I get something. And then at the top of the stairs, I just so happened to notice this bookshelf. And it was like the lights came on and the harps started playing and the cherubs were singing. And I wanted that. That's what I want. And we got up to the top of the stairs and found out it was a bookshelf full of Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Wayne Dyer, Anthony Robbins, Napoleon Hill. I always want to say Napoleon Dynamite. Wouldn't that be funny? I went to school with him, actually. We were on swim team together. Side note. But man, I wanted that bookcase. I didn't know why. I didn't know what any of that meant. I had no idea who those people were, but the calling and just it was an instant magnet pulling me towards it. And that's what I somehow associated with his wealth also. And sure enough, like that bookshelf kind of took over the next 6 or 8 years of my life, just pouring myself into those cassette tapes and VHS movies and books and lessons and all of it.
Were you into books before that?
I had spent a lot of time grounded and also and so every time I get grounded, like no more Nintendo, no more TV. Okay, well, I pretty much got accustomed with my stepdad to being grounded. So, but he would never take away my books. So I'd always be reading and reading and reading. And then on top of that, living in Salem, Oregon, the Willamette Valley, which means creeping death because it rains so much and there's so much mold there that it's not always feasible to go outside because it's either dark or cold or raining and just gross. So I did spend a lot of time reading books.
That's crazy. That really was a life-changing moment. One that you could see another definition of wealth, like a different way or a different goal to head toward. But then also those books having like several years impact on your learning and how you kind of viewed business in the world.
Going to middle school and high school, I wasn't really interested in what they had to say because I had just got done reading chapters and chapters and chapters about negotiation and sales tactics and, P&Ls and marketing and all these things. And I was like, that's what I really want to do. I'm not really interested in anything else besides that. So yeah, it was a major life altering experience.
Given that I'm able to look at your LinkedIn profile today and see that you've been a scuba dive master, a U.S. merchant marine boat captain, a commercial airline pilot, world explorer, you're a business owner. When you were a kid reading those books, what is it that you dreamed of doing?
Well, I had a couple different things. I'd watched Jacques Cousteau on, I think it was like maybe ABC reruns or maybe it's OPB, Oregon Public Broadcast, in the early 80s. And I fell like head over heels in love with the ocean and the concept of traveling to these far off tropical locales to go under the water and go experience everything that Jacques Cousteau was doing. But again, I mean, we were quite landlocked in Salem. So that always seemed kind of like a pipe dream or like something just so far out of my world that it would probably, never happen. So that was kind of the first kind of idea. And then I started reading mafia books like Godfather and Wise Guy, Goodfellas. And I was like, well, I guess I could just be in the mafia because I didn't really want to go in. I knew I didn't want to go to a 9-to-5 job and I didn't want to get locked in a cubicle and I didn't want to get locked into the corporate world. So, and I didn't really understand like what are other options. I never really, even though I had all this business practice and not, or knowledge, I guess. I didn't really know how it could possibly play out. I was kind of maybe too young for that. And then, so that was kind of, I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau, or I wanted to be, what's the main guy in Godfather, whatever his name was. Yeah. Don Corleone. Yeah. Without the violence. Yeah.
Those are like pretty polar, like, not opposites, but that's a big range of things to like become.
Yeah. Yeah. There should maybe be some red flags thrown up in there too. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, having grown up on government cheese, like as you were, I don't know, you graduate from school, what is your thinking? Like, with all that, like reading about personal development and sales and building something, like you have the power, right, to create your future. Did you have the sense of like, are you looking for jobs that you can make money? Are you looking for something that you can create?
Well, what happened after this 12-year-old bookshelf experience was a couple of years later, I was hanging out one afternoon and somebody knocked on the door. Turned out to be my grandpa and my dad's dad. And he said, "Hey, you want to go meet your dad?" I was like, "Yeah, I want to meet my dad. Where is he? Is he at the restaurant? We're going to go have lunch, or what's going on?" And he said, "No, he lives in St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he owns scuba diving shops." I was, what? Like Jacques Cousteau? He's like, "Yep." So went over to my grandpa's house and we called my dad, and my dad gets on the phone and says, "Yeah, we just got in from scuba diving with sharks." And we talked for about an hour, and he's like, "You want to come down and visit?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." So 2 weeks later, I was in St. Croix and I fell in love. I was like, I live here. This is awesome. I just absolutely loved the Caribbean. It was so different from Salem. It was 180 degrees opposite, and I loved every bit of that. And so really from the age of 14 until I graduated, I kind of negotiated my way out of high school when I was 18. And I ended up down in St. Croix a couple days later, and I was living the Jacques Cousteau life. It came to fruition.
That was the dream.
It was, yeah. Unbeknownst to me that my dad had already been doing that. It's like I had no clue if my dad was alive or where he was or what he was doing. And he was the modern day pirate Jacques Cousteau. And it was just like, whoa. Yeah.
So like, you're part traveling adventurer, part entrepreneur. You're also a dad. What are you truly passionate about today?
Being a dad, hands down, first and foremost. And then also, like, we've got puppies and kittens, and I'm really passionate about raising them to be really good dogs and really good cats. Although wrangling cats is proving to be challenging, so I try not to herd them as much. But the puppies are doing great. My daughter's doing really well, and I really enjoy helping people grow their businesses. I really, really enjoy watching people succeed in business and in life in general. And I've gone through a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and a lot of trials and tribulations and trials and errors. And so if I can help prevent some of those errors and help project, help people move forward in whatever their vocation or choice of life, that's what I actually really enjoy a lot also. Yeah.
So you've got the Tumelo Group now, where you're helping business owners with ideation, with design, with product manufacturing, with logistics. Is that like the perfect job for you because you have the good parts of entrepreneurship, but you don't have to put in like the endless hours, like the longest work week?
Exactly right, Andy. It's like 3:00, and if I don't have any more calls or if I don't want to do anything else, boom, I'm done and I'm outside playing, which is awesome. I absolutely love that. We're also bringing a lot more manufacturing, not only back to the States, but also back to Oregon, which I'm just beyond excited about. I'm actually going to go to a factory visit in Washington State next week. And it's just like, my mind is blown that we can manufacture here in the States to such a high degree and such a high level as, to compete with the international manufacturing realm and come in at very comparable prices. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's a continuation for the Tumelo Group, but it's also kind of a new day is upon us as we are starting to find more and more American manufacturers and helping more and more American businesses get launched and get up and running.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because when you were starting Hydro Flask, you had to learn about navigating manufacturing, like the process in China. Is that much different today? Is it possible to bring manufacturing back to the United States?
It is. It absolutely is. It's proving to be difficult and challenging, especially over the last, shall we say, a year or so. It was starting to get easier and easier, and then we kind of slid backwards a bit. But I believe that the American ingenuity is going to win out, and I believe that our manufacturing can be every bit, if not better, than it is on the far side of the world in the Orient, especially. But yeah, learning manufacturing was a trip. I mean, I've been to, at this point, I'm trying to kind of calculate a number, but I'd say close to 1,000 factories or so. Anything from one man door that rolls up and you walk in and there's kids sleeping on the floor and the wife's there making the food, and then the husband's there, cranking out, making screws, little tiny screws, all the way up to huge, almost cities with dormitories and restaurants and white polished floors. And I've seen the gamut now, and it really excites me to think that we're on our way to doing that again here.
To me, it seems like the big hurdle is the difference in labor cost, right? Because that's why we were outsourcing so much to first China, but then you see like greater China. So you see like Vietnam and other countries, Bangladesh. Are there other hurdles that are holding the US back from getting more active in manufacturing, or is it really just labor cost?
I don't want to get political. But hopefully maybe you can read into that answer. So without talking about the current administration, I'll say that the money is a big one. I mean, here in the States, we're paying $80 an hour for some of these employees. Over there, they're paying $8 an hour. And so there's a very big discrepancy there. And I think that, I mean, financially, that's a big one, because there are statistics, and, I don't know how to quote, where to give you the link to look at, but I've been told multiple times that the average American citizen would say that they will spend 20 to 30% extra for the Made in America logo until it comes time to actually purchase. And then it's zero. They're willing to pay $0 more for anything made in America. So robots can bring down labor costs, but that almost also kind of defeats the purpose. And so it's going to be a balancing act for the next few years. I can imagine, how do we bring down those costs back closer to on par with what we're finding in the Orient? But my belief, I mean, and this is very naive and non-collegiate, I have no college, I have nothing to back this belief up, but my belief is if we can put enough people back to work, then they'll have enough money that they can pay a little bit more, and they'll love supporting their local factories and their local manufacturing.
Yeah, so you have to, rising tide lifts all ships. You have to uplift everyone.
Exactly. And I think, we're down and we're getting even lower. And so I think when it starts, hopefully we'll rise up pretty darn quick. But again, nothing happens overnight.
So you're in this advisory role today, and you're helping people to create like the future hydro flasks of the world. Can you take us back to when you had your idea and you had to go to China and do this research and figure out manufacturing? Because it seemed like you started that search for manufactured product with very little money. Like, how do you start at this like low base and then say, I'm going to make this idea into a reality?
Well, I think, kind of backing up to being a dive master and a dive instructor, I was very accustomed to living with very little. Like I don't require a lot. I don't require a lot of food. I don't require a lot of, changes of shoes or anything else. And so taking the very little money that we had and going off to, the Orient to go find manufacturing was just another adventure for me. I've traveled a lot of my life, and I've shown up in, I remember the first time I showed up in Tahiti, I think I was barely just turned 19. I didn't even know they spoke French. I was like, oh, and so like, I'm kind of used to living in hostels and just traveling on a backpacker's budget. So to go to China and start poking around and finding factories was a fun adventure. And also I'm always very curious. And so I had a lot of incentive just out of the curiosity, if not anything else, really.
So where did you go initially?
I showed up in Shanghai. It was the cheapest plane ticket from Honolulu. And I found, I guess it must have been through either Google. It was I was kind of a novice at Google in 2007, but it was either Google or we knew a guy who was doing kind of field trips to the Canton Fair. It used to be called the Canton Fair, which is where Chinese factories would all come together and congregate for, like, I think it was almost a month. And they would just show how awesome they were at manufacturing. And this Hawaiian guy would do trips over there with Hawaiian, especially Hawaiian, but I think there's maybe some mainlanders also. But he'd take business folks over to the Canton Fair and introduce them to factories. And I just fell in love with that idea. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, I've got to get there. But he told me no. He's like, no, there's nobody doing double wall vacuum insulated stainless steel. There's no reason for you to come with me. I'm like, well, where would I go to find a water bottle? And he's like, well, probably Shanghai, which isn't near Canton. So I just showed up in Shanghai with one address to a water bottle factory. They turned out to be plastic. And just as I was kind of leaving thinking, dang, I just wasted a lot of resources and a lot of time to get here. But hey, this is cool though, because now I'm in China. This is a whole nother country. Somebody came up and just kind of grabbed my arm and said, hey, I got a cousin down in Hangzhou. You should go talk to him. So got to the train station and got down to Hangzhou and showed up, and there was millions of people there. And luckily the woman found me, and the whole next 3 or 4 days we just went around going to factory after factory after factory till finally somebody said, I don't think it's going to work, but we can try it. And we took that double wall vacuum insulated stainless steel water bottle idea and made some prototypes.
It seems like being an adventurer or a dive master served you well to explore China and go like on this expedition to try to figure out who's going to be manufacturing your product.
I just love travel. I would say that most of my life has been spent making enough money to feed my wanderlust. Like I would say I'm physically addicted to just, especially when I was younger. Now that I'm a little older and I'm a little bit more situated, I'm physically addicted to travel. I just love going to third world countries and meeting people. And I love going to new countries that don't speak the language and have new customs and new cultures and seeing new sights and meeting new people. I've always been very inquisitive, and I think it's helped quite a bit to propel me forward. Yeah, the curiosity has always just been there. I've always been really interested. Probably goes back to Jacques Cousteau days. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you love the adventure.
Yeah. Well, and then flying airplanes in the Caribbean, flying over the Bermuda Triangle all by myself in a plane that kept losing the right engine, and being on the water and flying for the airlines in tropical storms and in a hurricane and all of that. I love adventure. Yeah, Andy, I do. Yeah.
What is it like flying through the Bermuda Triangle? I remember as a kid always seeing Bermuda Triangle on TV and reading about it in books. I feel like you don't hear about it much anymore.
Which is odd. I agree. It feels like it had a good PR campaign and then it kind of died off. My experience was I was flying for this guy in St. Croix who had a multi-engine plane, pretty small. It was just for him and his family, maybe four or six passengers in the back. And the right engine just kept going out. So every time I'd land, the right engine would go off and I'd have to limp back to the hangar. And so finally he's like, "Hey, I got a guy who can fix it up in Fort Lauderdale. Will you fly it up?" I said, "Yeah, I got an ex-girlfriend up there. I can go hang out with her for a week and then come back." So flying, I got to first, I planned the route. I stopped in Puerto Rico, got fuel, and theoretically I was able to make it to Fort Lauderdale. I leave the northwest side of Puerto Rico, fully fueled. I'm in all green. I'm all good. I'm going through. I get to the Bermuda Triangle. My GPS goes off and it was like rebooting. It was constantly rebooting, not working. It's called a whiskey compass. It's basically just a compass. And if it ever broke, you could pour some whiskey in it back in the olden days, but it's basically just a compass. It was just spinning. It was spinning and spinning and spinning. And I knew that if the engine went out and I had to go down, I wanted to be closer to the ground than higher, because I didn't want to impact as hard. So I was but I'd have a less glide path, which was the downside of that. But I was flying pretty low. And so I had a good visual line of sight. I knew before the compass and before the GPS went out, like which islands I was looking to head towards. And so when it started going awry, it was like, oh yeah, this is real. There really is something going on here. This isn't just the History Channel blowing smoke. This is a fair dinkum thing here. And it lasted for about an hour and a half where I just kept going north. And then pretty soon everything kicked on again. But my fuel was gone. I had no more fuel. And I had kind of like, I don't know, this is going to sound kind of strange, but I kind of lost track of time also. Like there was a little bit of a warp in a wobble in the system, or something happened where I get out of this, whatever was behind me. Now my fuel is just about gone. And I was pretty much on course, which I was happy about, but I had to pull over in the Cayman Islands to get more fuel, which was totally unexpected. Got more fuel, get to Fort Lauderdale, land. Sure enough, the right engine goes out. And then the SWAT team was on me. This was after 9/11. And I stopped in the Caymans and hadn't put it on my flight plan. I didn't know I was going to have to stop in the Caymans. And so they get on the horn with me, like, you got to pull over, like, right here, right now. I said, my engine's dead and I got to get back to the hangar. If you guys want to talk, we can talk at the hangar, but I got a dead engine. And I get to the hangar and told them, hey, this is what happened. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. It was just, they didn't search the plane. They didn't ask for anything. They were just like, oh, you went through the Bermuda Triangle. You came on the other side and you didn't have any fuel. That's why you pulled over. Okay, we get it. Have a great day. So yeah, that was my trip through the Bermuda Triangle.
So it was SWAT. It wasn't Men in Black, at least.
I don't know. This guy held up this thing and pushed a button. Next thing I knew, I was, at the bar with my ex-girlfriend. So I don't know what happened. Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about, you did go to China, you had product made, you come back to the US, you have to sell that product. Like, what was that like? Because you're starting from like ground zero, where people don't even know what this product is.
Yeah. We had to figure out, like, what is this? How do we explain this to people without having them think it's black magic or witchcraft? And a lot of people did think that. They would look at it and they'd think, either we were lying and we didn't just put ice, we just put ice cubes in it, or there was some sort of new nuclear fusion technology that's keeping the ice frozen. And after people started using the bottles, they found that they really did work. And then on top of that, they felt really good physically, mentally, emotionally, because they were hydrated. We didn't really walk around with water on our person before this. And, the backpackers and the rock climbers and the dirt baggers, yeah, sure, we'd have plastic Nalgene bottles and we'd drink water when we went out to the crag and went rock climbing. But it wasn't an everyday, thing to do. And so as people started feeling better and better after drinking out of these bottles, they'd come back and they'd buy more and more and more. And they turned out to be our best salespeople. It really spread word of mouth really, really well. People were stealing them from their spouses and their kids were stealing them from their parents. And it was the number one most stolen product in a household because everybody wanted to use this water bottle because they loved it so much. So sales just took off. I mean, we were 600% a quarter growth year after year.
Yeah, that is crazy. How long were you in it? Were you in it for 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, about 5. Yeah, 4 or 5 years total, all said and done.
You grew this company that was growing revenue 600% every year. Can you talk about what it was like living this kind of fast-growing capitalist dream? Were there things that you liked about that?
There were a lot of things I loved about it. I was able to travel, which was again kind of my primary passion. It was really why I did anything in those days, was just to get more travel under my belt. I really enjoyed hanging out in the first class lounges of the airports and eating free food. Like I didn't have a lot of money, but I was in the first class lounges with all those airline miles. I loved flying first class. I loved going and meeting with heads of the NBA, the government, really large retail organizations, meeting the CEOs of some of the companies that I looked up to and inspired to, that I loved shopping at, and aspiring to get our product into these locations, and then getting those contracts negotiated and signed was a lot of fun. That business side I really, really enjoyed. I enjoyed not always being the smartest person in the room by a mile and having to just learn and ask questions. And my favorite is like, how do you mean? And they would kind of explain it to me as though I knew what the definition was, but how they meant for that specific thing. And I'm trying to pick up what the definition is. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that business side of things, I absolutely loved it. And we go from the mom and pop Mountain Supply, Trudy, she was one of our first outdoor retail locations here in Bend, to going into REI corporate headquarters and just going, wow, look at this, and everything in between.
What did you not like about it?
I would say that it was always difficult. We had HR and we had a really, really good CFO. And yet I didn't like, those were the things I didn't like. I always would pass that along to them. I didn't get involved with what the finances were, or how we were doing financially, or who was taking time off for whatever they were taking time off. And I really wanted to make the bottles closer to home. I always was trying to get into, I really wanted to upgrade people's lives. And there were some factories that we started out at that were really small and kind of, poorly lit and poorly ventilated. And I always thought it'd be great to be in the bigger factories. And then as we grew, the factories grew. And so which I kind of goes back to what I enjoyed, but watching the factories grow with us was really cool too. Like watching the quality of life of the people who were helping support the project. That was a lot of fun because it takes thousands of people to create these products. I mean, it's not just, one guy knocks out a bottle every 15 minutes and, there's 5 of those guys. There's lots and lots of people that are required to produce the packaging and all of the machines and keep the machines running and packaging the material on the pallets and getting them out to the docks, the dock workers getting them onto the ships. And so it was fun to watch the how many people actually touched the bottle prior to the actual customer touching the bottle for the first time.
Yeah, that's pretty wild to think about. I mean, Hydro Flask is such a phenomenon. I mean, you grew it from farmers markets to getting it into REI, and then you saw movie stars walking around with them. And that was originally from scratching your own itch. Like, I need a container that keeps my drink cold. And you created that, but it just grew into something that was so much larger than you as an individual. You talk about uplifting the factories and the people who work in the factories. I know that you had like a charitable thing early on too, like part of the profits were going to charitable causes. There's also a positive environmental and health angle. Looking back, like what means the most to you? Like, what are you most proud of?
I think with Hydro Flask, I think that if I had to say number one thing that I'm most proud of is the environmental impact. I'm upset that we're still making single-use plastic water bottles, but really we're not doing it for the plastic. We're doing it for the contents. People need the water that's inside these plastic water bottles. So that's a bummer. But the environmental impact, I think, is the global impact on the environment that not just Hydro Flask, but all of the other knockoffs and other brands that have started as a result. It's lots of plastic that we've kept out of the landfills and out of the oceans. That's probably my number one, but that's very closely neck and neck with the health benefits that people have been enjoying from just being hydrated and learning the valuable lessons of being hydrated, like just the valuable benefits of being hydrated, I think is probably neck and neck number two.
Yeah, I think just the sales from Hydro Flask and other companies. I mean, even though you feel like it's not enough, but it still makes a dent. It's still progress in the right direction, and hopefully creating like more awareness so that we can continue to make improvements and less impact on our environment.
Absolutely right, Andy. That's a good point. I think that, I'm sure that even if somebody went out and started a non-water bottle related product, if they could look at Hydro Flask as helping the environment, and then they went out and they used us as a role model to help the environment, that's another big ancillary benefit. Like I never even thought about that aspect of it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That's awesome. Yeah.
Was it difficult for you to step away from the business in 2012?
Yes and no. It had gotten to the point where the season was kind of over and I was ready to go on to my next adventure. And they were ready. It was like, it's kind of like a growth phases. It's like raising a child. I watch my daughter go through these different phases of, wow, she can now do this. And she wasn't able to do that yesterday, but now she can. And so I really, it was like my child was going off to college, but it was also like my child was getting kidnapped at the same time. So it was a very difficult time, but the possibilities that laid on the other side kept me going. And knowing that, the new owners just, they agreed, and we shook hands on, they were going to keep it here in Bend. They were not going to fire the staff methodically and just get rid of them. They were going to, by and large, keep the employees. They were going to keep growing the company and keep doing good. And so that felt good, but it also was, it was like losing a child, having a child kidnapped. And I don't wish that on anybody. And I don't want to talk too much about that topic, but I can say it was, it was rough, but it was also kind of bittersweet, nice.
It sounds like there were some challenges in there. This question you don't have to answer. When you sold it, the investors who took over, they did grow it, continue to grow it, and were able to sell it. Were you able to participate in that further upside, or you were completely out of the business?
Not whatsoever. No, they wanted me completely gone. I'm not a corporate yes man. I don't really follow directions very well. I enjoy the entrepreneurial startup stages, and I was not, and still really am not. I mean, I enjoy engaging the Tumelo Group. Our lane is really helping startups get up to a certain level, and then we pass them on to the big corporate money and the big corporate players and the big corporate CEOs. No, I had a horrible attorney, and I had no mentors. I had nobody to really help me. And so going through like pages and pages and pages of legal documents all on my own, and I had no experience with that. Again, Carl, my attorney, was just awful, and he wasn't really there for me. So when I was done, I was done. I know that they poured another lots of millions of dollars into it before they sold it. And so I don't want to say smoke and mirrors, but you put in a lot of money, and then you turn around and sell it for a lot of money. And it kind of makes sense that, yeah, you put that much in, you're going to get that much back. So yeah.
After you sold the company, you went hardcore into Kundalini yoga. Was that a spiritual journey? It sounds like you did more travel. You were going to India and visiting ashrams. What was that like?
The Kundalini just hit me one day, and it literally knocked me down. I had no idea. I was not religious. I'm not a dogmatic person. I had no idea I didn't really study any of this. I had no idea what was happening. And one day I literally just got knocked over. And when I got up, everything was different. My mouth was different. My vision was different. My body felt sensationally different. And thank goodness, a couple weeks later, I happened to meet somebody who was a Kundalini practitioner, and she told me that I needed to teach. Like, this is my first time ever doing Kundalini, but I'm doing it at my house. It's just coming naturally to me. And then I ended up in Bali, and same thing. I was at my very first morning in Bali. I was at a Kundalini yoga class, and I blacked out. And when I came to, the instructor was over the top of me, and the first thing she said was, "You need to teach." Like, this is my second time. She said, "You need to teach."
It wasn't, "Are you okay?"
No, nope. She didn't care about that. It was, "You need to teach." I'm like, this is my second day. I don't know what just happened. You need to teach. So I ended up in Sedona and at a Kundalini teacher training program. And it was a trip, Andy. It was a trip. It was like I'd been there before and I knew what was going on, but it was my very first Travis time experiencing that. And then I went on and did Hatha. And then, I spent a lot of time in silent retreats. Vinyasa flow led to more and more Kundalini, which led to more and more Vipassana meditations, 2-week silent isolation and things like that. And I had a ticket to go to India. I was just gonna leave and be done with all of everything. And the day before I left, I had a one-way ticket, and I heard this ding in the back of my head, and I heard one has been located, and I knew that the mother of my daughter had been found. And sure enough, the next morning I met her, and I canceled my trip to India. And it was good, I guess, because it was awesome because I have a daughter. I mean, come on. But it was good because I was so far down the yoga path that it was really encompassing my entire life. And it was to the point where I couldn't really even drive, because I would just go out into samadhi, out into just meditation, and just leave. And so it was really, I was going months without eating, not literally months without eating, but I lost about 60 pounds.
Wow.
80 pounds actually was the most I lost. And all I really wanted to do was be in yoga. And so, fast forward, I think that the true gift that I received from Hydro Flask was the Kundalini. It was never about the money. I never set out to make millions of dollars. I walked away and I made a lot of money, but it was stolen from me and plundered from me. And, but they can't take the Kundalini from me though. So that's cool.
Your attitude is, I think, very positive, given it doesn't feel good to have millions stolen from you.
It's a slap in the face, man. And it sucks. Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks going from living a life of, it was the first time in my life where I was comfortable financially, and I started to get comfortable living and eating. I was eating a healthy diet, and I was good, and I wasn't blowing my money on, strippers and blow. I was investing it wisely, and I thought I was going to be good for a long time. And then one day my financial advisor told me that it was all gone. And the first time he told me that, I was able to wrestle it back from him and call him out on it and say, no, you can't steal from me. And I got it back. And then about 4 months later, it was basically like, fuck you, Travis, bring it. We're XYZ big ass large company. And what are you going to do about it? Talked to the attorney. The attorney said, yeah, it's $250,000 retainer because it's such a big company we're fighting. So I was living on my trampoline, and then it actually started going downhill even from there. Yeah.
Wow. So given that you grew a company, you went down a spiritual journey, I'd like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I think success for me personally is, now that I have the blueprint of how to make money and how to grow businesses. And so for me, that's a part of my success, is that I have that. Nobody can take this knowledge that I have from me. You can lock me up. You can, take all everything else that I have in this physical world, but I still have the knowledge to take companies from zero to massive. And that's what I'm doing again. I'm now able to help other people grow themselves and grow their businesses. And for me, that's kind of my definition of success, is I feel successful when other people make it and when they get there to wherever their goal or their destination is.
Well, your business experiences sound like so diverse that most people have never experienced that. So that just, you bring with your experience is tremendous value, because you can advise business owners on what to do and what to avoid. I've met
a lot of celebrities over the years, from being a charter jet pilot, and then after Hydro Flask, and having money and being, in the right crowd, in the right place, at the right time, in the right place, restaurants or whatever it was. and become good friends with some of them, and ended up doing, consulting on that side of things as well. And yeah, I mean, I've got it been there, done that on quite a few topics. Yeah.
So I suspect you've seen money bring good out of people as well as bring really bad out of people. What do you want to teach your daughter about money and business?
I think that what I try to remind myself is that, it's okay to have money and not everybody's going to steal from you. It was really difficult when I first got a sizable paycheck, and I had to pay off my family because the company hadn't paid off my family. The business had fired my family members after I left, and I owed them money because the company didn't pay them. And they were upset with me, and they wanted more, and they deserved more. The people who were here with me in the very early difficult times, we never made anything off of this. We all walked away, my family members and my friends and myself included. We walked away with nothing, essentially, except for the Kundalini and, a little bit here and there. For the most part, like, it was plundered, and it caused a lot of difficulty with my family members and a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. And then when that was all going on, people started coming out of the woodwork to scam me. And because it was in the newspaper that it had sold for huge money, and they thought, people just assumed I had it in my pocket and I was walking around on the streets. I was living on my trampoline when that happened. The reason why I was in the newspaper sitting in that chair is because I lived on the trampoline 100 yards from that chair, and people came out to kidnap me. People came out to extort, $12 million, $20 million. And I realized that there's a psychological aspect to money and to wealth, and I need to work on myself, remembering that it's okay to make money. Not everybody's going to try to fuck you over or take it from you. And that's what I keep trying to tell myself. And I try to look at, the people who have done me harm or tried to do me harm was on them, not on me. And it's okay for my daughter to be successful and uber successful, but it does take a toll. And not everybody, should go through that. Like, it's very okay to have a very successful business in your town and not have to go internationally renowned. It's okay to be very successful as a school teacher or as an employee at a large corporation. As long as you're happy and your family's happy and healthy and you have enough to get by, like having these aspirations, looking at all these pretty bling bling on the TV, it's false. For me, I don't believe that that's where we need to be pushing our children towards. But at the same time, we need entrepreneurs, and we need people working hard and growing businesses and bringing in more and more employees and putting people to work in towns and communities. So that was kind of a long answer.
No, there are definitely some pros to having your small sign company or your fence company like you had, and just doing your business quietly.
Yep. Nobody tries to kidnap you if you own a sign company, is my experience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and your experience with us. Tell the Inspired Money listeners and viewers, where they can follow you and find out more about what you're doing.
info@tumelogroup.com, TUMALOGROUP is probably the best email. And then I'm Travis Rosbach on LinkedIn, ROSBACH.
Thanks so much, Travis.
Thank you, Andy. I'm glad to be here. It was awesome.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I like how Travis created a product that solved his own problem, and then he worked hard to bring it to the world. I'm truly grateful for that. We also heard that he wasn't primarily motivated by money. He truly wanted to create a better product that's safer for people to drink from and better for the environment. Despite his successes, we heard that it wasn't all rosy. It's a good reminder to surround yourself with great advisors who can help you when it's time to transition out of your company. I'd love to hear what you think. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please post a comment or share it in the Inspired Moneymakers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Thanks for making it to the end. Be sure to subscribe to my email that goes out every 2 weeks. It's investment focused, and the Runnymede investment team highlights data, news, and events that we think are worth sharing. Subscribe at inspiredmoney.fm/newsletter. It's free and informative. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.